Terminator was one of the most widely loved media franchises back in the 80s and into the 90s with the second movie. The iconic metal skeletons with their glowing red eyes of death became one of the most iconic, recognizable and most easily remembered designs ever to grace the screen regardless of its size. Where franchises like Star Wars would bring Darth Vader, Yoda or maybe lightsabers to mind, Terminator was pretty straightforward. You either think of the skeleton or the sunglasses wearing Arnold Schwarzenegger. The design was simple yet brilliant. Skulls and skeletons represent death, and so a machine resembling a skeleton bringing in death is a brilliant technological take on the Grim Reaper. There's so much to love about this franchise, and with different people at the helm, the number of fans nowadays would have been doubled, maybe even tripled. But after Judgment Day, every new entry made things worse. It was like being caught in quicksand. With every movie you make, you sink a little faster. Why did it prove so difficult to expand upon the first film? And why was it not even possible to stay afloat? For any fan of the Terminator franchise, and believe me, there are still tons, it's a crying shame the movies took such a nosedive. Personally, I don't hate Salvation. And I don't dislike Darth Vader either, but they were simply playing a losing game. A bug in the system that crept in early. A creative choice that seemed like a good idea but actually unintentionally hit the self-destruction button. So what caused the termination of this beloved pop culture juggernaut? And is there any way it could come back to life and live up to its potential? Let's dive into it. Now, what made the first movie so good? First of all, it was a pretty new concept, and most people who saw it, including myself, at a young age hadn't seen this type of movie before, where a convincing looking cyborg or robot was a huge impactful part of a movie. The only movie I saw something like this before was Aliens. That movie came out later, but I saw those movies first on TV. And I saw Bishop and Aliens bleed out white gunk before I saw the Terminator get stuck and crushed. Both movies gave me nightmares, as I was just a kid and maybe I shouldn't have been watching those films. I vividly remember the stuff that shocked me. Okay, so I don't remember actually having any nightmares over it, but I do remember it really made me scared at night. Though seeing Bishop in tatters but still functioning, which at that age I would probably have called breathing, wasn't scary as in monsters under your bed, it was just shocking. Though this was a machine, to a kid it was a human torn in pieces and suffering, whereas the Terminator was an actual thing that was scary and could in fact suddenly kick in the door and have me cornered with nowhere to run. Ever since watching that movie, I slept with the door open. So yeah, pretty scary for a kid, but that scare factor, that horror element, was one of the things that made that movie so good. A seemingly indestructible force that is out to get you, and all you can do is run, hide and hope it never finds you. It's something we saw also very well executed in the 2014 movie It Follows, which was one of the very few movies in past decades that was unexpectedly creepy for adults with a ton of horror viewing hours under the belt. Here it was some kind of mysterious carbon creature rather than a machine, but the concept was the same. The concept in and of itself is something that could have been drawn out a bit more, I think. But the second movie kinda went in a different direction. Now let's be clear, the second movie, it was excellent. Terminator 2 Judgment Day did what virtually no franchise usually manages to do. It improved upon the original, but improved upon in certain ways. But because it switched gears, it also kind of created a huge problem for the future of the franchise. The second movie was much more of an action movie and completely lost the horror element. Instead we got cool looks, cool rock music, cool teenage stuff, and for its time, insane CGI. The upgraded Terminator, the T2000, was cool, but it also started to rot in the foundation. They planted the idea that Skynet would keep coming up with for now impossible technological advancements. The third movie already started to feel like they were grasping at straws, with now getting a female Terminator. Of course, for any horny teenager and adult who doesn't mind watching pretty women on film, this was visually appealing, but you could have just tuned into Baywatch Weekly if that was what you were after. It is not the female character that was the problem though, of course not. But the technology that really started to go off the rails, that was the issue. The actor who played John Connor wasn't a bad actor, but in no way did he look anything like the teenage punk we saw in Judgment Day. A drug-related problem kept Edward Furlong from starring in the third movie. With all these delays you see nowadays, you kinda wonder why didn't they postpone and help him to get back to a good spot. Instead they went ahead and made the movie with someone who I can't remember seeing again until that absolute gem of a show, Carnival. Or what I would like to call Carnivale. It isn't his fault. If he had been in Judgment Day, it would have been fine. But because John Connor was played by someone else, it lost some of the magic, right? I kind of felt like, it was deteriorating. On top of that, Linda Hamilton, who played Sarah Connor, was also absent in that movie, because she felt her character wasn't being developed. So basically all the human characters were replaced, and it made the movie feel like a low-budget, straight-to-DVD film. Even for young audiences who could just barely go anywhere without their parents. No need to dig much deeper into the second and third entry for now. I'd like to move on to Salvation. Although that movie is not perfect, I'm the first to admit. It isn't as horrible as people would have you believe. Some of the horror was returned while holding on to that level of action. The Mad Max setting with dark tones and the cold colors gave the movie a hopeless oil-stained world nobody would ever want to live in. The Terminator in human clothing standing guard in the middle of the street for who knows how long, just waiting to kill anything that moves with patience that never runs out. It's cool, it's in line with the first Terminator movie. But then these huge machines that gather people and transport them made so little sense and was part of the problem, taking the machines too far in directions they shouldn't have been going. Terminator Genisys, the next installment, irrevocably damaged the franchise forever. Officially bringing back Arnold Schwarzenegger and through him hopefully bringing back some of the fans back into the cinema. But bringing back the original Terminator, it did not improve the script, story and cast that just feels like another straight-to-DVD film. A bad sequel that the original cast members didn't want any part of in fear of harming their careers forever. This wasn't the case because the cast actually included some great actors, but with the history of Terminator movies prior, this movie felt like a fail even before actually watching it. Even bringing back Cameron James and Linda Hamilton for Dark Fate couldn't reanimate this machine. It is such a shame. I personally love the trailer for this movie. The music, the mood they set. I got extremely excited when I first saw that. I was wowed when I saw this Terminator dividing into two separate units, even though the advancements were part of the problem. It just looked so well executed. Maybe redemption was possible after all. I went to watch the premiere and I didn't hate the movie, but I walked out knowing this movie wasn't gonna turn things around. There was no way this decent movie could put the franchise back on track. The virus that was loaded into the system with Judgment Day terminated the franchise. Built into a great, iconic, action-packed, exhilarating piece of cinema, which somehow fills your ears with Axl Rose without having to actually play a Guns N' Roses track. It was pop culture gold. Everything came together. The stars aligned. I mean it from the bottom of my heart when I say this. Terminator 2 Judgment Day, it was movie magic. Terminator as a franchise, it took off, but it aimed for the moon. But a defect in the programming set it on a collision course with the sun and it killed itself off, just like Optimus Prime did. But where the leader of the Autobots made a calculated sacrifice and took himself off the table for the good of others, the Terminator franchise just glitched and died. Now, to look at what could have been. One of the reasons I do like Salvation up to a certain degree, apart from the overall look, is because it does paint the world in a way that could really work, but rather than suddenly dropped in there with a complete new cast, imagine reaching this point from a different angle, holding on to the cast that we see in the first movie. Imagine having a gradual degradation of the world after the first Terminator movie, where little by little the world would have slipped into that world that we see in Salvation. The world slowly falling apart because governments and societies collapse in the war against the machine, which is a slow losing battle. Not because the machines kept becoming more advanced, but because of the endless number of machines. A Terminator can seemingly be produced in minutes, where humans would need over, let's say, 15 years before they could become an efficient, trained soldier. The focus could be on defending resources like food and water and oil, and strategic land positions, like we see in actual wars. Maybe a stalemate that slowly slips in favor of the machine as the number of humans now united as one against a common foe keeps diminishing. Though the Terminators are then already well known to everyone, the machines looking like humans could still find ways to infiltrate and spy. But the whole liquid metal and nanobot thing should and could have been kept out. The T2000 was cool back in the 90s because CGI was a pretty new toy, but like I said, it unintentionally kind of pushed the self-termination button right there. The T2000 and any other human killing machines device after that never made the same impact the original Terminator did. The original skeleton and the somewhat logical second phase, a human appearance, was as far as they needed to take the Terminators. If I could offer one piece of advice, I would just wait a couple of years and hit the reboot button. Unfortunately, it would need to aim at younger audiences who hopefully never watched any of the Terminator movies, but fans who want what's best for the franchise could possibly still enjoy it as well. I know I would. The franchise would have to finally move on from Mr. Terminator himself. Not a popular thing to say probably, but be fair, him showing up in other movies, both CGI and real, it didn't magically turn the movies into good movies ever since Terminator 2. A slower paced, well executed epic told over 3 to 9 movies, like The Planet of the Apes, Harry Potter, Star Wars, well, maybe not Star Wars. It could be done if it were to be made smaller and more controlled. A physical machine that is out to kill isn't hard to imagine, looking at the machines that are already created by companies like Boston Dynamics, for example. Small yacht-sized ships floating in the air like jet fighters and nanobots or liquid metal that doesn't scatter or scatters but comes back together like nothing ever happened seems impossible, and it's not scary at all. If it were to be made more realistic, the actual war on machines, smeared over a 30-year timeline, there are so many intriguing stories that could be told within that timeline. Look at World War II, for example. It's terrible that it happened, but the number of incredible or heartbreaking stories is endless. I know better than to expect my plea to have any effect, but I would love few things more than the Terminator franchise revived, well planned out, and have people involved running a tight ship and who have a passion for the franchise. Real people with vision and purpose, like James Cameron himself. Say what you want about him, but this man was also involved with Titanic and Avatar, which I personally don't especially like a lot, but they are huge impressive cinematic achievements. I myself like the Terminator and the Battle Angel Alita movies most. While Alita didn't perform well at the box office, it was very well done. James Cameron recognized how good that source material was and saw there was huge potential in it. If you're honestly honest, you cannot deny with a straight face that this is the best live action approach to manga source material. I would like to point out that I think Netflix's One Piece series was also very well adapted. But Alita is on a different level, but I'm drifting here. The point is, James Cameron will forever be one of my Hollywood heroes, and I'm grateful for what he did with Terminator at the start and what he tried to do at the end. But the end, for now, really seems to be the end. I cannot imagine anything good can be done without hitting the reset button, but I do hope we have not seen the last of the Terminator. If they do reboot, they should not go through the ashes to try to recover anything other than the original model. The only thing that could or maybe even should be left unchanged is the Terminator skeleton. The original T800 design is perfection, indestructible, and it comes with a memory chip loaded with memories, emotion and nostalgia. Impossible to erase from our minds, impossible to erase from our hearts, no matter how many times you drop it, misplace it, or let it be damaged by other less interesting iterations of Terminators. Some things you just cannot terminate. So, to James Cameron, for the love of everything that isn't terminated yet, sit some people down for a chat and reboot this legendary franchise, and then turn it into what it could and should have been. World War Omega. Oh hey, and dear Mr. Cameron, if for some miraculous reason you did do me the honor of watching this video, hit that subscribe button as well. To everyone who made it this far, I appreciate you. Feel free to air your opinions. I'll read every Terminator related comment I'll find. If you are a Terminator fanboy like myself, please hit the like button and double please to hit the subscribe button. And hasta la vista. Come see me again in another video. Bye.
Subscribe quietly or there will be trouble.